And on the line with me is our old friend Joe Madison, host of the Joe Madison Show, weekdays 6 to 10 a.m. on Sirius XM channel 126. Civil and human rights activist. JoeMadison.com is his website. You can tweet him at Madison SiriusXM. And Joe, welcome back to the show.
Always good, and we're keeping an eye on your boat that you left here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're going to be putting that up for sale here pretty soon, I think.
Yeah,
you know,
well, I tell you, that area has so changed. But
yeah, it really
it's amazing. Yeah, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well,
yeah.
it's always a pleasure having you with us on the show. You had on your program on Sirius XM, I believe it was yesterday, maybe the day before, Senator Harris. And you played a clip of Mitch McConnell being asked if he would support anti-lynching legislation, and he said, well, I thought we did that years ago. Frankly, I thought we did that years ago.
Well,
apparently we didn't.
Yourself. You're not by yourself. Let me tell you how that came up. You know, there's this amazing, I don't even want to call it a museum, but that's what it is, memorial to 4,000 people who were lynched in America, and down in Alabama, I think just outside of Montgomery. But they opened the museum down there with an array of political celebrities and elected officials and discussion on criminal justice and modern day lynching. And the natural extension of those discussions is what are we doing about modern day lynching? And I read a piece that Reverend Jesse Jackson wrote, and in part it said there had been 200 attempts, Tom, to pass federal anti-lynching laws. 200 attempts, and all 200 attempts failed in the United States Congress. Now, you had the Senate that apologized for lynching, but they never passed a federal anti-lynching law. And so I shared it with my audience, and then I asked people to start calling and lobbying, like you do all the time. Get involved. This is a participatory exercise, civic engagement, and people were doing that. Well, what happened was Congressman Danny Davis and Bobby Rush, I think, from Chicago, it started outlining federal legislation, and then one of our POTUS contributors, Olivier, Knox, right? Olivier Knox, who's brand new here at Sirius, he said, I'm interviewing the Senate Majority Leader. Is there any question that you would want to ask? And I said, ask him about supporting or passing a federal anti-lynching law. He did. And the response, just like, wow, he said, I thought we did that back in the Johnson years. Right. And by the way, I'll support it. Well, the next day, I had Senator Kamala Harris on from California, and I played the McConnell's response for her, and she said, wow, hold on to that recording, and then a couple of days later, she then announced that she was going to introduce federal anti-lynching laws. So that's sort of the background of how all of this came about.
Is there a need for it now?
Oh, of course, of course. Let me tell you, when I brought it up on my show, there had been 2 African-American men who had been lynched in Oklahoma, and their bodies were dismembered.
Recently?
Yeah, yes. I mean, we're talking about a month ago.
My God.
This is part of the problem. The Trump stuff, I mean,
these stories aren't even getting out there.
Air out of everything, and people don't seem to pay attention. But we've had, if you go to the Southern Poverty Law Center website, they keep track of all of these lynchings that take place. See, people think when they think lynching, they immediately think it has to be with a rope and somebody is hanging.
Right.
Look, lynching takes place in many forms, and so that's why when they opened up the museum in Alabama, that's why they had a series of workshops to talk about different types of lynching. When you get police officers that are indiscriminately shooting people, guy reaches in to get his identification, his kids are in the back seat, he gets shot, like the situation in Minneapolis, that's lynching.
So you're suggesting that, thank you for that. So you're suggesting that basically racially motivated murder should be a federal crime. It seems like it already, again, I'm all in favor of anti-lynching legislation, but doesn't that fall into the hate crime legislation?
Well, yeah, it falls into hate crime, but at the same time, as Danny Davis pointed out, it doesn't end there. Look, the lynching, hate crime is the motivation.
Right.
Lynching is the act.
Right. Okay, I got it.
You want to prevent the act.
So
you want to make the act a criminal offense.
Yeah, and bring the FBI in to investigate it. I mean, rather than just depend on the local cops who might have been involved.
See, people think lynching is something that we're beyond that. Well, we're not beyond it, and that's why when they did that, when they held those conferences down there at that museum, I tell you, a perfect person to interview is Cheryl Eiffel, who has written a book on lynching and how it still goes on today. But people have to understand, they can't just think it's just a rope, a tree, and the old 18th and 19th, 20th century acts. It takes different forms.
Right.
And as I pointed out, the story that got by a lot of people, the Oklahoma. You remember, I'll give you another case of modern-day lynching. You remember James Byrd in Texas?
Yep.
Remember?
Dragged
by
a truck,
down the street?
Yeah.
And walking down a road, and they drug him in back of a pickup truck to the point where his body was totally mutilated. That's lynching.
Yeah. Yes, amen. So I absolutely agree, and the number for Congress is switchboard. If you want to call and lobby on behalf of federal anti-lynching legislation is 202-225-3121. Joe, we just have a couple of minutes. I wanted to ask you also about your thoughts on the defense by Sanders, Huckabee Sanders, and Trump, and Jeff Sessions, using that quote from, I think it's Romans 14, that historically was used to justify slavery, that you should simply follow the law. Now they're using that to justify tearing children. Literally, yesterday or a couple days ago, a nursing baby from her mother's side. I mean,
we're a better country. We're a better country, and you said it best. You just educated your audience. You said it best. That was the very same thing that the Southern religious leaders used to justify slavery in this country for over 200 years, and it divided the church then. As I've always said, what we're dealing with today is not Jim Crow, but James Crow Esquire. It's nothing more than a sophisticated form of the same old thing, and we talked about it this morning. I got to tell you, Tom, it's a sad day when the Attorney General can use something that was used to justify slavery, but that just tells you where Jefferson, Beauregard, Sessions' head is, and we're a better country. We're just a better country than that. And yes, I know, somebody said today, well, what's the number? How many people are we going to allow in here? I said, I don't know what the number is, but I can tell you it can't be zero.
Yeah, and we need to have a rational policy, and we don't.
Of course
and
we
it's
do.
crazy.
Of course we do.
The great Joe
But you got to
Madison.
have rational people to write the policy.
There you go. JoeMadison.com, Madison at Madison Sirius XM. Hang on just a second here.